Every year, our school is required to perform at least 2 lockdown drills, but our principal at the time would always have us do more, like 3 or 4, so I was pretty used to it. All the teachers would always warn us ahead of time to save any panic. That morning, as I walked into my first period class, I was informed by my history teacher that the school would be having a lockdown drill that day. I actually kind of liked them because it meant we'd have less work to do. Considering the 20 or 25 minutes they always take, 30 minutes into class and a short buzzer went off, followed by her principal's voice on the intercom. Like every other drill, he explained how the school was going into lockdown, but that it was just a practice drill. He explained that should there ever be a real lockdown, the buzzer would sound for longer and there would be no intercom announcement. Our teacher instructed all of us to shut the curtains and go into the corner of the classroom that was not visible from the outside door. You then shut off the lights and lock the door. For the next few minutes, we sat in silence. Eventually, we heard footsteps outside. It was the principal trying every classroom door to make sure they were locked and that the classes were responding to the lockdown correctly. Before I knew it, the drill was over. The day progressed, and I was now sitting in my physics class, which was right after lunch. At some point, I ducked out of the class to use the bathroom. Now, our school building had a basement down there. They had a bathroom that was much more private and a lot less busy, so I would always try to use that one. There were a couple classrooms down there, so it didn't look weird for me to go down there. I was sitting in one of the back stalls. I was the only one in there, which was usually the case. All of a sudden, I heard the lockdown buzzer start going off from outside in the hall. It sounded for about a full minute before it abruptly stopped. I waited for the principal's voice to come over the speakers, but it never did, which, like I mentioned earlier, was supposed to signify a real lockdown. At first, I didn't really think it was a real lockdown, though it happened too close to the practice lockdown earlier that morning. I thought it was just a second part to the drill, but as I sat there for a few more minutes, I started to realize that if that were the case, that probably would have been explained over the intercom. I started to panic, now thinking this was real. I wasn't safe in the bathroom. The door had no lock, so I ran outside to try and find a classroom. There wasn't much for options in that basement. It was also hard to see, now that they turned the hall lights off. I did eventually find a classroom door. I tried the handle. It was locked. I looked in through the glass part of the door in one of the corners. I could barely make out a kid hiding there was a class inside. I banged on the door explaining that I was a student and trying to hide. I got no response. I was both terrified and frustrated at the same time. I realized protocol was to never let anyone inside, no matter what I was on. I thought about going back to the bathroom, but found an empty computer lab first and settled on that. I got under one of the back desks and for the second time that day, sat in silence, only this time for a real lockdown. 10 minutes went by. Nothing, not even an update over the intercom. Then a heart-dropping sound of running footsteps from outside, coming down the basement stairs. The person's heavy breathing, it kept getting closer. It now sounded like it was just outside the room. I started adjusting my body position to try and duck down more to get further out of view. When a light turned on, was the light to the computer on the desk above me. Waking up, I must have accidentally pulled the mouse cord. It wasn't that bright, but it was enough for me to make out a silhouette in the doorway to the room. I genuinely feared for my life in that moment. The person was just standing there, prayed they wouldn't enter the room, and after what felt like an eternity, they turned and continued running down the hallway a few minutes later, and the lockdown was over. The school tried to keep the incident silent, but it eventually got out. Apparently a kid in my grade that I actually slightly knew stole his dad's gun and got in the school through a back door he left prompt open earlier in the day. Police showed up to the school and detained him before any bullets were shot. They later searched his backpack and found a paper with a list of names on it, which they believe was who he meant to kill that day. Pictures of the list itself leaked. My name was number 4 on that list. I never heard of the kid, just got scared and decided not to do anything. Or if he just genuinely didn't find anybody after entering the building. Either way, I believe the person that I saw while hiding in the computer lab was him, and that I could have lost my life in that moment. Back in October of 2016, for whatever reason, these killer clown sightings kept getting reported around America. Real or fake videos of them would almost always get posted somewhere online. For that whole month, it was all over the news. I remember in our town specifically, it kind of got out of hand. People in the area were committing real crimes wearing clown masks or sometimes full-body clown outfits. It was honestly terrifying. Anyway, back when this was happening, I was in high school. Throughout that whole month, many of the staff and school emails received threats. They were always from a different random email address, so there was no real way of blocking them. It was always something like killerclown@cvx.zy or something random. It usually had something to the effect of killer clown followed by some random characters. It got so bad that the school had to send out a mass email to all students and parents saying they were aware of the threats and were taking them seriously. I remember Sundays, the teachers were instructed to teach with their classroom doors locked. They weren't even allowed to leave to go to the bathroom. Needless to say, a lot of us were on edge. I have no shame in saying it was really scary. I saw some of the things the emails were saying. A lot of it was really graphic and truly disturbing. Of course, at the time, none of us knew if anyone was really planning to act on these threats or if it was just someone somewhere behind a computer screen playing a sick joke. But honestly, it felt like only a matter of time before something would go down. And finally, one day, something would. I was in my trigonometry class when the school's lockdown alarm went off. Principal's voice then came over the loudspeaker. His voice was shaky now. Our principal was a pretty intimidating dude, so hearing fear in his voice only furthered my own fear. I knew this lockdown had to be related to the threats in that classroom. There wasn't really a good corner for all of us to hide in. You could see a good portion of the room from outside the door, so our teacher ordered us to barricade the door with all the desks and chairs in the room. He then sat as far away from the door as we could, although even this provided a clear view of the glass window on the door. I watched as all the lights abruptly turned off in the hallway, shortly followed by the lights in the classroom. The familiar hum of the heating system faded. School had cut the power. It was eerie. The whole building was quiet, and there wasn't the usual whispering or joking around from other students like there was during practice drills. For this kind of thing, even our teacher had a look of fear on his face, putting me more on edge. We sat there for multiple minutes. We then heard a metal banging sound like someone was hitting the lockers down the hall. I've always started yelling. The girl sitting next to me quietly began crying, the noises continuing off and on for the next few minutes. As time passed, the noises kept getting louder, as whoever was making them seemingly kept getting closer. At this point, my classmates and I were staring at each other, all of us gauging each other's reactions, and the sound of the classroom's door handle rattling. I looked up through the glass on the door. I saw a clown mask looking in. Arson stood there for a while, not doing anything, and they roughly ducked down out of file, and the sound of the door handle rattling continued. They were trying to pick the lock. We all sat there listening to this happen when the lock disengaged. Immediately, the full body force of this person smashed into the door. The desks barricading the door slightly shifted back. This happened a few more times, but not much progress was made. They eventually gave up, and we could hear their footsteps running away down the hall. When police arrived, they cleared the building and escorted all of us out. No one was ever found responsible for the lockdown. It's believed that at least 3 people dressing clown costumes entered the back entrance of the school that day, intent on making true to the threats sent over email. At the time, the school did have some cameras, but during the lockdown, they cut the power, so they never caught anything. School was canceled for the next few days. When we came back, the school had installed a new auto-locking feature on the doors and windows.